Greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke Beppu, and I hope all of you are doing very well. If you don't mind, I'd like to take this opportunity to show you another 5 by Criterion. Five by Criterion is just a little series that I've conjured up just to take this opportunity to take 5 titles from the Criterion collection that I think are worthy of some sort of comment, and perhaps it might be a sort of springboard of conversation. Perhaps it might be a way for you to explore other titles of the Criterion collection that you might not have thought of otherwise. Maybe it might be maybe films that you know already and that are eager to discuss with me or with other people on YouTube or on other parts of the internet. So it's just really just another way to extend the whole, top 5, top 10 criterions, but just extend it beyond those parameters, because I think the Criterion collection is very vast and very wide and incredibly. It's incredibly varied, so I think it can sustain many kinds of these 5 by lists. So without further ado, let me present to you this week's 5 by Criterion. I hope you enjoy. Spy number 564, Pale Flower. Now, this is a film in 1964, directed by Masahiro Shinoda. This is a Japanese film, and it's a Japanese gangster film or mob film. And in particular, it's about one particular gangster or person from the mob, a tough guy who's just come out of prison. So it's one of these tough guy films. And it's 1960s, it's black and white, and it's about gambling, and it's got kind of a femme fatale type, and it's got sort of mob gangster intrigue, and you've got this cool, brooding, brutish leading man who's named as Muraki, and he's played with such magnificence by the actor Ryo Ikebe. Now, Ryo Ikebe might be familiar to some of you out there who will watch Ozu films, because he sometimes appears in some of the films of Yasujiro Ozu. He has a very handsome face, but now it's the early 1960s, and he's a little bit older. He's a little bit more world-weary. You can see it in his face, and it really shows in his performance. He plays a gangster who's just gotten out of prison. And he still remains loyal to his mob boss, but he realized that there have been a lot of machinations and intrigue and a bit of sort of Machiavellian intrigue with respect to shifts in the power paradigms of the mob society in Japan. And so he has to adapt to that. Maybe he likes it, maybe he doesn't like it, but all the while he is into gambling, and he's into this specific kind of card gambling in Japan. And it's really a fascinating story, because you've got this cool gangster story. This is a cool gangster story, first and foremost, and it's got it's probably one of the coolest performances given by an actor in this kind of role, this gangster role. Muraki, as played by Ryo Ikebe, is one of the coolest characters you'll ever come across, and he's got just a real sense of style, and he doesn't overplay it. He just plays it just right. He doesn't overstay his welcome, and all of his moves are just so suave and just perfect and on point. And to counteract that, you've got this wonderful leading lady. It's the young lady who is the sort of the gambling addict, or she's a bit of a gambling, how should I put it? We don't quite know what her story is, and that's one of the mysteries that propels the story through. Who is this woman and what is her deal? And what's her name? Sayako. And Sayako is played by the beautiful Mariko Kaga. And she's got this really interesting face. She hardly ever smiles, and she's always into the cards and the gambling. And it's just, that's all she's into. And she and Muraki make this really electric, dynamite couple. And you follow them, and you see them go through game after game, and you follow their intrigue. You don't quite know what the actual specifics of the narrative are. You get a sense that something is going on, but really it doesn't really matter. All that really matters in the end is the electrifying just the electrifying nature of the gambling that goes on, and the sort of high voltage intensity between these two actors. I mean, there's a lot of sexual tension between these two actors, and it's wonderful to behold. The gambling in this film is fantastic because I have no idea what the rules are for this gambling game, and yet I remain so riveted when you see these cards being turned over and these people reacting. It's so riveting. Again, I have no idea what the rules are. I don't know what is a winning hand and what is a losing hand, but still I remain riveted. And that's one of the strengths of this film, Pale Flowers, that it catapults you into this world that maybe you're not necessarily fully aware of, and yet it gives you all of the ways in, if you know what I mean. It really helps you in, and it lures you in. Once you're in, you're locked in, and you are really it just envelops you in a way that's just so hypnotic. This is a wonderful hypnotic gangster film, and it's a bit violent, and it's very shocking in some places, and there are some plot twists that make it very intriguing as a narrative. But ultimately it's about mood, and it's about style, and it's led by the wonderful performance by Ryo Ikebe. And my goodness, some of the music cues in this are just pure poetry. You will not be disappointed if you decide to get this and watch it for the first time. I urge you, please, if you are interested in good cinema, gangster cinema, innovative cinema, Japanese cinema of the finest order, the top class, then please by all means consider watching Pale Flower. This particular release has a new high definition digital restoration with uncompressed monaural soundtrack, and also an interview with Masahiro Shinoda, and also a selected scene audio commentary by film scholar Peter Grilly, which is very good, by the way, and also a trailer, and a new improved English subtitle translation, and also Chuck Stevens wrote an essay in here, which is a really nice essay. Pale Flower, directed by Masahiro Shinoda, 1964. This is one of the classics of the Criterion Collection. If you like gambling films, if you like gangster films, if you like cool Japanese films with suave characters, impeccable acting, Pale Flower is the way to go. I promise you will enjoy it. Pale Flower. Spy number 144, Loves of a Blonde. This is an early Criterion release, obviously, because it's the Spy number 144. This is from 1965. It's a Czech film, and this is a film that's directed by Milos Forman. Now, this is a film, this is a DVD, and this DVD includes a new digital transfer with restored image and sound. Then there's a video interview with director Milos Forman, which is actually a really good interview. It goes into his background and how he got into directing cinema. And also there's a deleted scene, and also there is a subtitle, new improved English subtitle translation. Okay, and there should be an essay too. Yes, there is an essay in here. It's short, but it's very informative in places. So, okay, so Loves of a Blonde. So why should you watch this film? You should watch this film because it is a refreshing, effervescent film. It is a film about love, about the sort of excitement of first love, the potential disappointments of first love, and the ways in which one can grow and learn and mature in ways that are both, how should I put it, just life-affirming and heartbreaking. Loves of a Blonde has it all. And what's amazing about it is that, this is from 1965, right? And this is from, this is, part of the so-called Czech New Wave. And what in my mind, being a novice in terms of Czech New Wave cinema, I always figure, and this is by no means not an insult, but I always figure that films of this nature would have an overt political message, and would have the political message on the forefront of the film. And of course, that's not a bad thing. That's a perfectly legitimate way to present a film and to present a message. What's wonderful about this film, though, is that it does seem to have a political message, but it's not overtly made. On the contrary, it's laid in the background, and it's given life, but it's given life from a distance, if you know what I mean. There are certain subtle hints sprinkled which give it its political thrust, if you know what I mean. This idea of the factory and the women who work in the factory, and the sort of the way in which they are pretty much, their fate is sealed and they have to do what the state tells them to do, etc. So there are these sorts of issues there that are present, but they are all in the background. And in the foreground, we're thrust with the story of this young woman who is just trying to find love in this place where there are very few men in the town, which is quite an interesting concept. So that's the kind of the general foundation of the film. And so therefore, on top of that foundation, we've got the story of the young woman, the blonde of the title, as it were. And this is by, the character's name is Andula, and the actress's name is Hanu Britschovu, and she gives a wonderful, rich, tender, and delightful performance here. It's really one of the great performances that you'll find in the cinema of the Criterion Collection. And the reason why it's great, let me just show a picture. This is her right there. That's the character of Andula, and she is so determined and naive and innocent and intelligent all at once. And it's really hard to pull that off, but she pulls it off with such bravery and such willingness that it's a marvel to behold. And there are some pretty difficult scenes in here that involve Andula. I'm sure when you watch the film for the first time, you might share my own feelings of being disturbed, being slightly taken aback, being a little bit shocked in the way in which the film deals with how she is trying to cope with her awakening sexuality, in particular when she is meeting the boy for the first time, Milda, and the scenes of intimacy between those two characters. It's quite interesting how it develops. I mean, it's not it's not easy, and it's very anti-romantic, if that's a word I could coin. But from there, we've got a developing story of a relationship that is trying to form, it's trying to find its seeds, and it's trying to grow from that. But will it grow or will it not grow? Will Milda's parents get in the way, or won't or will there be some hope for this relationship between Andula and Milda? And there is a certain suspense and tension there when we watch it, and we are rooting for this couple. In particular, we are rooting for Andula. She is by no means a character that we are prone to dislike. On the contrary, we sympathize with her. I sympathize with her. And I sympathize with her plight, being this worker in the shoe factory. And she's just trying to find love, I suppose. She's just trying to meet a nice boy. And there's an interesting thing that's happening here. The character is not given a sense of let's say, identity beyond her looking for love, or her exploring her relationship and her experience and her intimacy with this young man that she meets for the first time, Milda. So I suppose there's an argument to be had that perhaps this film is presenting the female character in a way that's maybe close-minded. In other words, it's based only on her desire to meet a man, and it's only based on her sexual awakening from a young timid girl to a woman who's trying to find love. And so in that way, perhaps it could be seen as being very limiting in terms of the development of a female character. But I think we are meant to focus on that aspect of sexuality, in particular because of the situation that Andula finds herself in. She's in a town where the population of women vastly outnumber the population of men, so there are more women than men. So therefore, there is a certain, how should I put it, imbalance in terms of the sexes between the male population and the female population. So that kind of environment, I'm sure, would engender some sort of, let's say, pressure or desire to sort of explore one's feelings, and exploring one's feelings in the context of a relationship between, let's say, someone that one is attracted to. So in that sense, in the case of Andula, it would be trying to find some kind of meaning or some kind of, let's say, way forward, as it were, with respect to the relationships that she has with the various men in the film. And in that sense, it's quite fascinating because she's a young woman and she doesn't, maybe she knows or she doesn't know, but that's the whole thing. It's her journey, and we are along with her, and we are together with her as she progresses her way through this journey. And this journey, as you will see, will take her out of her little town, and she will have her little briefcase and stand on the side of the road and trying to hitchhike her way to the bigger town to find Milda and where he lives, and her parent and his parents, and her interaction with his parents, and the kind of shenanigans and the comedy that ensues. It's really quite comedic and tragic at the same time. Again, it's so refreshing to see a film that is so, oh gosh, it's just so full of vigor, and it's full of, it's just brimming with life. And it's so refreshing to see a film that is brimming, filled to the brim with life. And that is what Loves of the Blonde is. And I should recommend also the video interview with Milos Forman, because he goes in depth into the kind of ways in which he films. He tries to take real people, not professional actors, in order to film them. And he always says, or he says in the video interview, that the way he tried to film some of the actors, especially the non-professional ones, was that he would not necessarily rely on a script, but he would just tell them what they should generally say, and then just leave it to them to kind of improvise on the spot, and then he would film that, and then usually that would work to the great benefit of the film. And the example of this is Milda's mother. Milda's mother, who appears in the second half of the film very memorably, is quite a wonderful character. You know, Milda's father and Milda's mother, but especially the mother. I mean, some of those lines that she gives is just so, gosh, it's so perfect and on the nose, and just she's like every mother. She's every mother. She's just it's wonderful. It's not just a Czech mother, it's every mother. That is sort of the realism that is captured in this film, and that Milos Forman apparently was very focused on when he was filming. It's wonderful to see these the naturalist tendencies of the performances, especially from the non-professional actors. It's really wonderful. So in that sense, the video interview on this disc is quite recommended. It is an old release. In other words, it's just a DVD, and there are very few supplements, so it might not be such a quite of a sexy choice for a film to buy if you're passing by a Barnes & Noble or the like. However, don't let that fool you, because the film itself is well worth it. I promise you, the film itself is well worth it. More so even, because it is filled with much life and vitality and just hope and energy and innocence, and you just feel good watching it, and you know that you're watching something that is being made by someone who cares, and it's just so nice to see. And the scenes of intimacy are so, oh gosh, they're so filled with creativity and tastefully done, and really profound in many respects. Oh gosh, you know, just some of the scenes of the way that Andula's body is framed in the camera frame right there, and the comedy that ensues, with Milda trying to shut the what is it? She's trying to shut the blind, and he's having, he's naked and he's trying to shut the blind. It's all this. It's just funny, and it's just tragic at the same time. And to have those two polar opposites together united within the single frame is, I think, a brilliant feat. And that's just an example of why I cherish this film so much. Loves of the Blonde. Please watch it. You will definitely enjoy it, I promise you. Loves of a Blonde. Spy number 379, The Burmese Harp. This is 1956. This is directed by Kon Ichikawa. Again, this is another film from Japan. Now, I should point out that I am very fortunate to be part of a little group online. It's sort of a film club, and every week or every 2 weeks we watch a film, and we just talk about it online. And I think the current film that's going to be talked about, I think, next week is this film, The Burmese Harp. And so that gave me the opportunity to rewatch it. And I rewatched it, and it was just it's a remarkable film, and it's a remarkable film for many ways. It's incredibly it's an incredibly moving film. Gosh, it is an incredibly moving film. Now, I admit that I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of World War II films, and in particular World War II films about Japanese soldiers. I don't connect with them as much as other people might, and I think it's because there's a bit of a I have a bit of a how should I put it? Yeah, I always find sometimes that there's a little bit of misplaced jingoism that occurs, or I'm a little bit difficult. I'm struggling to connect with the characters sometimes, but the exception of that general feeling that I have has always been the Burmese harp. And the reason is because there seems to be a real universality that permeates the entire story. And the universality of what I'm talking about is this idea and it's not the Japanese soldiers versus the British soldiers. It's not the Japanese versus the Allied forces. It's more about, there are certain war scenes or battle scenes that occur, but that's not the main point of this. The main point of this film is not the battle scenes themselves. It's the aftermath of war. And therefore, the aftermath and the tragedy of that aftermath is a tragedy that can be shared on all fronts. And thus, the universality of the whole piece sets in, which to me is quite powerful. And therefore, it makes the film, helps it to transcend beyond any kind of political trappings that it might otherwise have, given that it's a film that focuses on a particular aspect of the Japanese army. So, with that in mind, I find this film to be just a revelation in many respects. I mean, it does have a wonderful shot scenes of picturesque scenery. You've got scenes of rocky slopes and people standing in the distance talking here, and you've got people walking across a vast vista, and quite natural, quite wondrous landscapes of nature, which are almost reminiscent of like the best of David Lean or Akira Kurosawa. Even it's quite a feat, really. You see a particular person walking across a field of mud, and it's just you feel each footstep as he walks across, and he's just a little tiny character, and you see the footprints as he walks across or runs across, and it's just a sight to behold, visually speaking. But there are other treats to the film as well. The performances are quite stunning. You've got the great performance by the famous Japanese actor Rentaro Mikuni as the Captain Inoue, and you see this character of the captain as being the leader of this group, this merry band of men, if you will, and he is so filled with sincerity and comradeship, and he is so devoted to his soldiers, and you really believe him, and you really follow him, and you really root for him, and you want him to succeed. And one of the main cruxes of the film is him trying to find one of his men, and that man is Mizushima. And Mizushima is played by Shoji Yasui, and it's a phenomenal performance by Shoji Yasui as Mizushima, because Mizushima is a character that is perhaps he takes one of the most astounding transformations of any character you will see in any film. Really, it's a wonderful, a remarkable transformation if you think about it. He goes from a soldier to something beyond a soldier, and I don't want to say anything more lest I spoil it, but it's one of those transformations that is both, it's ambiguous in its starts and its reasoning, because you realize that it might not necessarily come from a place of real, sincere honesty, but as the time and as the film progresses, you realize that there is something transformative and beautiful going on within this whole setting and landscape and palette that is filled with tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, and the tragedy is the human cost of war. the dead bodies, the rotting flesh of dead people once alive, and the waste, the horrible waste of life, of energy that all this is. Was it worth it? And it's a powerful image, and the way he reacts, it's just, you feel each grunt as he's trying to struggle physically and emotionally and mentally. Quite an astounding transformation. One of the most astounding transformations of a character I think I've seen in a Criterion Collection film. Let me stop there because I can just go on. But The Burmese Harp is a film that I think you should watch because it is a very, on the surface, an entertaining film, because it is a film that's set in the wartime, and it is a film that has kind of a suspense element. You know, will Captain Inoue be able to find Mizushima in time? So there's that superficial narrative element. And when I say superficial, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a really good way. I just mean on the top level. But then if you go down the layers, you'll find that there are other aspects at play. And not least of which being sort of the Mizushima as a symbol for something other than he is. And what that other is, I will leave it to your imagination. You know, I hope my endorsement of this film has been convincing enough. It might be a difficult thing because this is a DVD, and I'm not sure if this is going to be released on Blu-ray. I hope it does get an upgrade, because that means maybe more people will seek to watch it. But in the meantime, if you are okay with watching the DVD, I highly recommend it. This one has a great interview with the director Kon Ichikawa, and also a great interview with Rentaro Mikuni, the actor who plays Captain Inoue. And also there is a really well-written essay in the book by Tony Rand. You know, Tony Rand can do no wrong when it comes to his analysis and commentary on Japanese cinema. Just the best. So whenever there's a Tony Rand commentary or essay, you better think about getting it, because you're getting, more than your money's worth, I'm telling you. The Burmese Harp DVD, but please consider this. You will not be disappointed. This is a phenomenal film. This is a poetic film. This is quite a, it will make you think, and it will make you just, it's stunning. For your consideration, please. The Burmese Harp. Spy number 314, Pickpocket. This is a film from 1959, and this is directed by the French filmmaker Robert Bresson. Now, up to now, I have not handled or discussed any film by Robert Bresson. And the reason why I have not discussed a film by Robert Bresson up to now is because Robert Bresson is just one of those filmmakers for me that is really just the top tier, the top of the top, the creme de la creme, just astounding. Every work that I've seen directed by Robert Bresson has just been a colossal experience of the mind and the spirit. It's just been one of those life-changing moments as a film goer. So Pickpocket was a film that I was very hesitant to choose when talking about films in this YouTube video. But I watched it recently, and a very funny thing happened. When I put it in to the machine and I played it, and it's a very short film, it's only about 76 minutes. And when it was over, I just stopped and I took a breath. I had a glass of water, and about 10 minutes later, I regained my composure, and I just pushed play and just watched it again. And I watched it, and it was just, I allowed it to soak in some more. And after the film was over, I just sat there again, just awestruck and dumbfounded. Just what had happened to me, I had no idea. And so I had to regain my composure again. And so this time it took a little bit more time, maybe about an hour or so. And again, after I had calmed down a bit, I went back to the television and I pushed play and I watched it again. So after that third time, and I had seen the film many times before. I know this film very well. I've seen this film. This is one of the films that I was enamored with so much when I first saw it in college. So I'm pretty confident about my knowledge of the narrative moments of the film. But it was only that recent time when I saw it, 3 times within the same day, that I realized that this is a film that is not austere. It is not a film that people tend to describe as being minimalist and austere and very cold. On the contrary, no, this is hot. This is filled with a lot of passion. There is a lot of great energy, and the performances are not minimalist, I would say. They are very subtle and nuanced. It's amazing. How do I put it? The performances in this film are, oh gosh. At first glance, if you're going to watch this film, you might think that the people are bland and the actors are bland and they're not really good actors. So that's a really fair criticism, I think, to make. That's a fair assessment. And I'm not surprised if people would feel that way. But I urge you, if you do feel that way, I urge you just to reconsider and just consider it like this. When the characters of the main character Michel and the female character Jeanne and their friend Jacques, and also the police detective, etc., they tend to be pretty bland and they don't show a lot of emotion, at least on the surface. But there are people out there in the world, right, that whenever they feel a certain way, they don't necessarily let it show in their face, but it's inside and it's seething, or it's growing, or it's developing, or it's becoming maybe a curse or a blessing within one's heart. But it doesn't necessarily show on the face or in one's actions. It could, but it doesn't. And I think what's so fascinating then, if you think about the performances of Pickpocket through that lens, is that you're looking at a face that there's so much going on underneath. You know it because of the narrative. The narrative tells you that. But the fact that nothing is sort of registering, or nothing seems to register on that face, makes it even more compelling, because you know that there's something going on. And so therefore you are drawn to, let's say, the slight movement of the lips, the way that the head moves up and down, the hand gesture, the eyes, the where they look at. Do they look this way, or do they look this way, up or down? When do they move? At what points? When certain words are spoken, what happens to their face, etc. So therefore, if their eyes move this way when a word is spoken, what does that word then mean? How does that add to the significance of their own particular characterization? These sorts of things occur, or they begin to occur, when you watch a film like Pickpocket, and especially a film that's dealing with Pickpocket and the main character of Michel, who is such a rich, complicated character, because he's got so much going on with his mother and with his is it an illness? Is it something more with respect to his ways of being a thief? There's so much going on, and he's a complex character. So therefore, you are looking at the face of a complex character when you see that seemingly monotone, minimalist expression on his face. And then you realize, my goodness, we are experiencing something quite filled with emotional depth here. And it's filled with emotional depth, and therefore it is filled with a lot of passion and a lot of nuance and substance, and it's not cold and it's not austere. And that's why I love Pickpocket, because it tricks you. It tricks me anyway. It tricks me into thinking that I'm watching a film that is cold, and it's just a very a calculating, character stands here, turns, goes over there, says a line, other character says a line, and that's it. No. There is so much going on here. You've got the police detective trying to make sense of these crimes. You've got Jeanne and Jacques trying to make sense of this sort of this odd and a terrible situation, which is in essence the situation of Michel and his mother, and Michel's activities, whatever they may be. Now, you and I know what they are because we are privy to that information as being viewers of the film, but the characters around them don't necessarily know that. And so that tension and all that beauty comes together and just forms a wonderful masterwork that is Pickpocket. And gosh, I could just go on and on because this is a phenomenal film. There are so many phenomenal things about this film. Technically speaking, you've got some of those, those shots, those sequences when he is doing his pickpocketing. Amazing. When they're in the train station, when he teams up with other pickpockets. There's Kasagi and also the other pickpocket who's played by Pierre Tex, by the way, who has another Criterion Collection connection here. It's just a marvel to behold. The movement of the hands, the unnaturalness of the way that the hands arch and curve and rotate upwards and inwards. It's a real marvel, a technical marvel, and you realize the smoothness of it and the sharp operation of the whole thing, and the way that they steal watches and steal wallets and do all that magic. It's magic, and you feel so bad watching it because you know that it's such a bad thing. They're taking all these wallets from these people, and yet it's a stunning thing. It's stunning. That's all visual treats. Accompanying a film that is filled to the brim with passionate characters, led, of course, by Michel, and also with brilliant counterpoint by Jeanne. So Michel, Martin LaSalle, who is known affectionately as Martino, and also Jeanne, who's played by the lovely Marika Green. And so that's it. And that's it. And you've got this wonderful budding, is it a romance? I don't even know if it's a romance, but basically you have this story of a man who is essentially experiencing isolation and solitude. And it's this, will he be able to form a human connection or won't he? Will he be able to form a connection with his mother? Will he be able to form a connection with his friend or with this woman? Or won't he? And that's in a nutshell what this film is about. And it's one simple and also so relatable because, ultimately we are about human connection, and we want to connect, or we try to connect with others. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't succeed. And it's that feeling that we have, or the feeling that I have, that enables me to sympathize or empathize with a character like Michel, the pickpocket of the piece. And therefore, it is filled with passion and emotion and bravery and a real drive towards something that is true and beautiful. That is why I think Pickpocket is a wonderful film, and therefore I think if you haven't seen it, please watch it, and please be prepared. Do not take it for granted because it's a short film. It is a rich film, it is a complex film, and it is a film that will challenge you in the way in which it tells this deceptively simple or seemingly simple story of a man who is alone. But there might be the hope of human connection. And that is Pickpocket. The last film is Spy Number 132, and this is a film that is it is perhaps one of the most remarkable films I have ever seen. Again, let me repeat, it is one of the most remarkable films that I have ever seen. And it's this: The Ruling Class. Now, this is a DVD. Again, this is Spine number 132. This is from 1972, and it's 154 minutes. And it's got this pretty, I admit, it's a pretty bad cover. It's just, Peter O'Toole in a hat. It's got The Ruling Class. It's not really that compelling of a cover, right? You've got the back here, which is, I don't know, a little bit interesting. But if you don't know the film, you're probably going to think, oh, it looks a little bit boring. It looks like a proper English, upper class English drama or something. And you might, and therefore that might be up your alley. It might not be, and you might be not inclined to watch it. Okay, that's fun. I mean, that's on Criterion. That's not on you. I mean, that's about how this film is being presented to you. So, but it's a shame if you haven't seen this film yet. It's a real shame because, as I say, this is one of the most remarkable films I have ever seen. And where do I even begin with this great film? This is a film that is, it is so hard to pin down. It is so hard to describe within one genre, because it is a film that defies genre. It defies being compartmentalized into one particular genre. It is not only a film that is a sort of a romp, a sort of an English comedy romp. It is also a it gives a great commentary on the social class system. It also gives it's a musical. As I said, it's a comedy. It's a witty comedy. It's got really dry humor, and it's wonderful humor led by the wonderfully funny Peter O'Toole. JC, just wonderful. And what did I say? So it's a musical, it's a comedy, it's sort of a film about social class, so it's a drama. And it is also a thriller. It is also a horror film, and yes, this is also a horror film, and it is a frightening horror film. And those genres don't merge together into one supergenre. No, they are conflicting with each other in a way that is just unsettling, uneasy. It makes you, the viewer, feel ill at ease when you're watching it, and it shocks you, and it just becomes something that is both wonderfully comic and extremely horrifying. I can't even think of another example where that works. Maybe the closest example I could think of is maybe a film like, do you know Takashi Miike's Audition? Audition has this wonderful blend of genres, and it blends in a way that is just startling, right? This film, I think, for my money, has a wonderful blend of differing genres, and the way that they come together is, for my money, even more startling than Audition. I love Audition, don't get me wrong, but it's just the way that the differing genres interact with each other and contrast with each other and clash with each other is just so mind-blowing. And yes, so that, in a nutshell, is what The Ruling Class means to me as a film, and that's why, in a nutshell, it is one of the most remarkable films I have ever seen. If I were to go a little bit deeper without spoiling the film, I would say that the drive of the film is thanks to the remarkable performance of Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole here is the man. He is the man. He gives one of the finest performances ever, and he is, again, I don't want to spoil it, but he gives a performance that, for the first half of the film, generally is of one tenor, and then in the second half of the film, it's of a completely different tone and characterization altogether, and it's oh gosh, it's remarkable. in the first half of the film, he's got some of the funniest lines of dialogue I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. And then on this side of the coin, he's just got some of the most frightening moments I've ever seen. They rivals. I'm like, when I say frightening, I mean like horror level frightening. I'm not talking about a chill or so. I'm talking about just genuine horror. Genuine horror. It's like he's like a monster. He's an angel and he's a monster, and it's just it's like you're watching a monster or just a villain or something. Gosh, the way that he just registers that with the way that he kind of slopes his face down, or the way his eyes kind of widen, or he just kind of grits his teeth, or just does little things like that, versus earlier in the film when he's just jumping up and down and he's got long hair and he's saying all these wonderfully odd bits of dialogue, and it's just a pleasure to see him singing and dancing. You can't believe that it's the same person. Gosh, my gosh, could this be a perfect film? It could be. It could very well be a perfect film for me. And I say that because I think it's I don't know, maybe my standards for perfection in film are maybe not as high as they should be, and maybe you think that way after I've made that comment. But I do think it is a perfect film because it feels like a film that has everything. And what I mean by that is because it seems to just run the gamut of the human experience in a way that is, it's like you're on a roller coaster. And you go from happiness to sadness to tragedy to horror to happiness again to fulfillment to just real just painful irony, and then back to horror, and then back to happiness, and then uncertainty, and what will happen in the future, etc. It's just you got all of that within the scope of this film, and then you just at the same time, while you're on this journey, you are laughing at some of the funniest dialogue that's ever been created for a film. You are marveling the wonderful performance of the actors, led, of course, by Peter O'Toole, and you are just sucked in. And my goodness, you don't. My goodness, it doesn't let you go, and you. There's a point when you are voluntarily at the will of the film because you so much fall in love with Peter O'Toole's character JC, but when he turns into Jack, then you realize you want to get out, but you can't escape because by that time the film has you in its clutches and it just won't let go until that very last shot, and that final moment, it'll leave you stunned and speechless. Yes, this is a remarkable film, and this is, if it's not a perfect film, then it certainly is a candidate for the perfect film, one of the most perfect films in the Criterion Collection, The Ruling Class. I really have to say something about this cover. I think this is a terrible cover. I love Peter O'Toole's face, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't convey, I think, the startling brilliance that this film contains. So if you just, and I don't mind if you do, but if you're a type that judges a book by its cover or a DVD by its cover, then, very reasonably, you'll probably pass this one over because it looks a little bit boring if you just look at the cover. But believe me, do not judge this by its cover alone, because it is much, much better than that. Believe me, it is one of the most remarkable films I have ever seen, and you will not be disappointed. Okay, so very quickly, so this is a DVD, and this has a digital transfer supervised by director Peter Medak, and you've got a commentary featuring Peter O'Toole and Peter Medak and writer Peter Barnes, which is a fantastic commentary, by the way. It's just listening to Peter Medak and Peter O'Toole and Peter Barnes just talk. They're just it's so great to have a commentary. You've got three enthusiastic, intelligent people talking about a film they obviously love. Oh gosh. And you've got Peter Medak's home movies, shot on location for the ruling class. And you've also got production stills, and you've got a trailer and also subtitles. It's 154 minutes, so it might seem like a long one, and it might seem like a bit of a stuffy English drama when you first see it. But believe me, it is a wild one. It just goes all over the place. It'll just, you'll feel, maybe by the time you're finished, you'll feel like me, you'll just be exhausted because you realize you've just been through the ringer. This film takes you through the ringer and back again, I'm telling you. And that's what great cinema is all about, is it not? It's just an opportunity to just be swept away and just with the ebbs and flows of the currents of great cinema. And that's what this is. This takes you to places that you don't want to go. This entertains you and scares you, and it just gives you an entertainment and something to think about, which is really frightening. I mean, the messages about capital punishment are just so chilling, just so chilling. Anyway, I don't want to, I'm going way over with my time as usual, so I apologize. But again, I implore you, please give this film a chance. The Ruling Class, please give this a chance. It might not be the greatest film you'll ever see. Okay, fair enough. If it's not, fair enough. But it is a unique film experience. And even if you don't love it as much as I do, I'm sure that you will at least like it and find it very interesting, and hopefully you will love it, and maybe even more so. And this is a film that I love and I admire and I find truly remarkable. So if you are so inclined, please consider watching The Ruling Class. So with that in mind, I'd like to say thank you very much, and please keep watching great movies, and if you have any recommendations for me, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Cheers.